We are finding out more people who've been cast in the Life is Strange TV show, but what is the actual series going to look like? Let's talk about it. Friends and foes, welcome to my little corner of the internet where I talk about all things gaming, because I am an obsessed gamer. My discussion videos have gone very few over the last few weeks, and unfortunately that was just down to being sick, and not so unfortunately down to adopting my new cat. You can see them both messing around here. They'll only do that when I'm recording. They won't act up any other time, only when the camera turns on. I swear, they can see that little light and they know that's when they have to act out. So I want to get back on track doing discussion videos, and I want to make them... So I want to get back on track making discussion videos, not just about Life is Strange, but also for other video games and like gaming news and stuff like that. So this is the first video in this little series. I'm still getting back into the groove of filming and editing these types of videos, so please bear with me. So we've been getting a lot of names of people cast in the new Life is Strange series. We have Rachel Amber, Joyce Price, I believe David was also announced. Cats! So Esther McGregor has been cast as Rachel Amber, and I don't know much about her. A lot of the cast seem to be like little known actors. I'm going to do a whole separate video talking about the actors who are going to be in the series. But she has been cast as Rachel Amber. And it raised a few questions among the Life is Strange fans, and that was, how is the episode's going to play out? Because obviously Rachel's arc is in Before the Storm. Rachel's never physically in the first game, which is what this series is going to be based off of. So a lot of people were questioning now, like, what way that show's going to go. So I thought I would just explore, what they could potentially do in this series, and how it's going to, fall into place. So what we know at the moment is that there's going to be 6 episodes of the Life is Strange series. So I reckon they're going to do something similar to The Last of Us. They're going to lay out the series the same way the first series of The Last of Us show was done. And that is how they mixed Left Behind in with the first game. So I believe it was episode 5 or 6 that the whole story pivots and we go to Left Behind and we see Riley and we learn about her story. I think they're going to do something similar with this series, and that's where Rachel comes into it. Or another possibility is they could tell the story, like anytime Chloe brings up Rachel, they could have like a little flashback to what actually happened. We see snippets of Chloe and Rachel. That could be a way they show Rachel, throughout the whole series and not being dedicated to one episode. I am leaning towards a dedicated Rachel episode. I can just see them doing that because that would be heart-shattering, and that's what Life is Strange does best. But I reckon what they might do is they might slim down Before the Storm into one episode and put it right in the middle of the 5 episodes. So if I were to guess, it'd probably be episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, then do the jump to Before the Storm, and then go back and do episodes 4 and 5. Where in this case, they'd now be 5 and 6. Life is Strange does heartbreak very well. They know how to make us cry. So I reckon if the writers are evil enough, they will place Rachel's episode right between 3 and 4, give us a whole episode where we can meet Rachel, fall in love with Rachel, and then boom, episode 4, we learn what happens to her. We learn her fate is revealed. Episode 4 of the series... Episode 4 of the series, is going to give her, her character. She's not just going to be a missing person, They are going to want the new viewers to be attached to her when they reveal what actually happens to her. So that placement right in the middle of 3 and 4, I can see that working. Now, one thing I cannot stress enough with adaptations of video games is they are adaptations. They're based... It's going to be based off Life is Strange. It's not going to be an exact replica. They're not going to do it bit by bit. The characters and the story are heavily inspired by the game. They will take the story in separate little directions, and make it its own. But it's all going to stay on the same track that the game was on. And that's one thing that concerns me about the show. I feel like once the big changes are aired, there's going to be probably a lot of backlash. But again, I just can't stress enough that an adaptation is not a replica. It's not a copy and paste job. It's a show that's based off the characters and story of Life is Strange. So with that said, I reckon they're going to change up Rachel's story dramatically. A few weeks ago on Twitter, the creator of the original Life is Strange game, Michel Ka, I never know how to say his last name, but he put up a tweet saying that they would have done Rachel's story much differently. I think someone asked, did Before the Storm Rachel, is that who they imagined her being? And he replied saying, we actually envisioned Rachel coming from a much poorer family, and that's why there was not much hype in the search for her, because her family couldn't afford to keep the media going on it. Whereas in Before the Storm, her dad is a high figure. He's a district attorney. So for them, they felt that Rachel should have came from a poorer background. Her parents weren't wealthy. They weren't high up the career ladder. And I reckon that the show might follow that suit. And mostly why is because I think they're going to have to slim down Rachel's story as much as possible. We are going to get the story on how Chloe met Rachel, but I feel like taking away her dad as the district attorney is going to slim down her story enough to fit into one episode arc. Because I feel like if they were to do the show exactly like Before the Storm, it's just going to raise more questions. Viewers, and by viewers I mean the new people who are not video gamers, who are going to be watching this show for the first time as television lovers. I feel like they're going to say why aren't they searching for her more? Her dad's a district attorney. She should have been all over the news. There could have been more motive of something bad happening to her because she's the district attorney's daughter. So realistically, her case should have gotten more attention in the game because of who her dad was. And I feel like that's not going to make sense in the show. So I think they will put her into that, poorer family, and they might follow through with the whole storyline of her dad having an affair. Will they go into that woman being Rachel's biological mother? I don't know. But I feel like we're going to get a very basic how Chloe and Rachel met, them catching out her dad having an affair, and they might just end it at that for Chloe and Rachel's arc, and it'll just be like an episode just to show how their bond started and how it got as deep as it got. I think Before the Storm episode 1 will probably blend into the series a lot, or they might just do their own thing with it. I don't know if... Now, bear in mind, this show's been in the works for years now. I'm pretty sure it's been in the works since Before the Storm came out. So maybe they're going to go and do their own thing with Rachel. They might not even look at Deck 9 at all for inspiration. They might just focus entirely on the Don't Nod material. But I reckon they are going to probably take Rachel in a different direction. They might change her background. They might make adjustments to her story arc, particularly in the first episode. And I'm guessing these episodes are going to be an hour, maybe a little over an hour each. If it's anything like Last of Us, it might be 45 minutes to an hour. So there's going to be a lot that needs to be cut down to fit that content into hour-long slots. So I reckon it's going to be a lot from the main game that's going to be cut in favour of the show's main story. And by that, I mean probably the minor choices. I think the major choices are going to definitely blend into the story. But I think, the second page, minor details, they'll all be cut. We're not going to get to experience, certain characters. We're not going to learn things that we know from the game. They're going to just prioritise the main choices. And as I said, this is an adaptation. So I think they could even branch out and explore options that were not even in the first game. And by that, I mean, there's a concept art of Max in The Storm in episode 5, and she's wearing a hospital gown. And that concept was cut from the game. I can't remember if it was because of budgeting or if it just didn't work for them. But the creators of the first game were saying that in their original script, David took Max to the hospital and she escaped the hospital to go get that Polaroid of Warren. And I can't remember if it was just too long or if it just wasn't working out for them, but then they cut it so where Max leaves the dark room on her own accord, she never goes to the hospital. They could potentially add that scene into the show. As I said, it's an adaptation, so things will be changed, and a lot of what's going to be changed as well is just to make more sense to the story. Again, going back to The Last of Us, take Shimmer, for example. She was killed off very early on in the game, but in the show, she remained alive. And I feel that's because in the game, there's a lot of stuff that was unanswered in the game. How did they get back to Seattle, this, that, and the other. But in the show, they kind of leave us those openings like, okay, well, the horse is still alive, so they probably took the horse back to Seattle. So they will kind of tie up a lot of loose ends in the show. So they're going to probably cut and expand on a lot of things to make that happen. So if I was to predict exactly how that whole series is going to play out, this is how I'd see it going. Episode 1 is going to be Max's introduction. We get the introduction to Blackwell. We learn a bit about her past, her friendship with Chloe. By the end of the episode, she reunites with Chloe. She learns all about Rachel. That's episode 1. Episode 2, her and Chloe will do their catching up, much like the game. They'll go to the junkyard. Frank's arc, if it's there, will be introduced. I'm pretty sure he was cast. He is going to be in it. So his arc is going to be introduced. They go back to the school. And then we have the whole ending with Kate. Episode 2 ends there. Then in episode 3, I feel like... Then in episode 3, we're going to get our pool scene. It better happen. We'll get our pool scene the morning with Chloe. We'll find out all the info on David. We'll find out, all the secrets Rachel's been keeping. Chloe is going to have that breakdown and, bring Max back to Blackwell. And, this is where they might change it a bit, because I feel like they need to end episode 3 on Chloe's breakdown. So that way, the next episode, they're going to jump straight into Before the Storm, So it's kind of like, the episode ends on Chloe being betrayed, this huge betrayal, her breaking down over it, and then it's going to jump straight into her and Rachel's story, why she feels so strongly about it, like what they've actually been through. So then episode 4 is going to explore Rachel. And much like the game, I think episode 5, aka Dark Room, is going to be the episode. I feel like they might move Max jumping into the Polaroid from episode 3 to episode 4. So the episode might start with her jumping into the Polaroid. We'll see paralyzed Chloe. I don't think that'll be cut, because that was very significant. So I think that might be in the show, maybe to a little lesser extent, but that is definitely going to be there because it shows the extreme consequence of her messing with time. That all might happen at the start of the episode. Max undoes it, goes back. The dark room's revealed. We find Rachel, and then we get that huge ending that we got in the game. Then episode 6 will be our big finale, the escape from the dark room, which is going to have to be more dramatic than in the game, bear in mind. Gets the Polaroid, the nightmare sequence, that's all going to be in it, but I feel like they're going to change the nightmare sequence a lot. Maybe kind of reflect more on the previous events of the series. They'll change that all up, and then it'll end on our big choice at the end. And that's a topic for another video, what ending they're going to pick. I think they're going to sacrifice Arcadia Bay just because that is the most popular choice. But then again, you never know. There was a third ending rumoured when the game was in development, of where Chloe gets shot, but she does survive. So maybe they could jump into that. Maybe they'll take that route. Maybe they'll just say no to Donut's crossroads and take their own roads. But that is overall how I see this show playing out. I reckon we're getting a huge Rachel episode right in the middle, and then probably snippets of her throughout the season. I think people were so focused on the fact that this was based off the first game that they didn't understand why Rachel was cast. And as well, they were going to have to cast one for Rachel, even if she wasn't in it, even if Before the Storm didn't exist. They were going to have to cast someone as Rachel, because they're going to need to use someone's photo for the missing person posters. They were going to need to, have references to what she looked like. So, someone would have been cast. It may not have been a huge talking role, but someone would have been cast. Overall, I am very excited for the series. I'm very open to any changes they're going to make. I'm very curious to see where they're going to go. As I said before, this has been a long time coming. It was announced, well, not announced, but talks of it started a year after the first game ended. So, most people found this a surprise, but my reaction was, oh, finally. So I'm very excited. I'm very open to see what they do and what they change. And yeah, just overall, I'm just very, very excited to see what happens. So what do you guys think? What way do you envision the episodes laying out? Do you think we're going to get a big Rachel Amber episode? Or what do you see happening in terms of the layout of the series? Let me know in the comments, because I love reading them. And I shall see you guys in the next one. Bye!